We welcome Paul Jones of Maroon and White Daily on 3's Mississippi State site. And Paul, you got a coaching search to cover. It's an interesting one because Mississippi State in a strange situation. They let go of Zach Arnett after less than a season, but obviously his was kind of an extended interim after the passing of Mike Leach. It feels like there's quite a few good sitting head coach options for them, plus a former successful Mississippi State head coach just sitting out there on TV. What do you think is going to happen here in the next few weeks?
Obviously, you can, whether they got rid of Zach Arnett Monday or after the Egg Bowl, you can still make talks with agents. You can still do the behind-the-scenes stuff. So I don't think that really – maybe it moves up the timeline a little bit. But, I have a feeling that Zach Selman wants to find some stability. Like I said, this program is looking for its fifth new head coach since 2017. And, to me, that kind of points to him trying to find a sitting Power 5 head coach. He mentioned on Monday, Zach Selman said he's keeping an open mind. Young, old coordinator, sitting P5 coach, G5 coach. He wants to keep an open mind. But, I feel like he's going to go after some big fish early on and see how that plays out. But, obviously, in this day and age with the transfer portal, December signing period, we're probably looking at a 2-week process here before they get somebody in here.
Yeah, Zach Selman, former Joe Castiglione lieutenant at Oklahoma. Joe, his history is defensive coordinator Bob Stoops, offensive coordinator Lincoln Riley, defensive coordinator Brent Venables. But it's interesting because you and I were talking before we started recording, and we've both talked to a bunch of people, and it does seem like the group of sitting head coaches would be the one that Zach Selman may go for first here.
I agree. And, this is a program that obviously you're in the SEC. This is a program that you're fixing to welcome Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC. And, I think that's why he kind of pulled the plug early on Coach Arnett, because you can't sit around and wait while your rival is looking at a 10-2 season and possible New Year's Day Bowl. You got, like I said, Texas, Oklahoma coming in. This is a program that, and of course, let's be fair here. Zach Arnett was thrown into almost an impossible situation. I mean, this could be a program where, if Coach Leach doesn't tragically pass away, is, winding down another 8-9 win season, another solid bowl game. But, I think they knew going in, especially when you look at the way they structured Zach's contract, that they knew this is probably going to be a trial basis and see how it goes. And if it doesn't work out, hey, let's move on to something else pretty quick. So, I think Zach knows football drives it here in Mississippi State, like he does at any SEC school. And you're going to have to get some stability. And I think he wants a proven Power 5 head coach in here.
So I had Lance Leipold on my hot board. He's one of those that's kind of on everybody's mind because of the turnaround at Kansas. One I thought that was interesting that you had on your list was Gus Malzahn, because, I thought about that earlier today. Like, Gus is at UCF. He seems happy. They're in the Big 12 now, but a chance to get back in the SEC doesn't, I would imagine that would intrigue him.
I do. And if you just being completely honest here, I think if he does get back in the SEC, I would think Arkansas would probably be the more likely scenario. Obviously, they made some talks with Gus before they hired Sam Pittman, and that was a situation where, he didn't want to make the move then, but, things could change by now.
Yeah. What's the cat's name, by the way?
Nah, he doesn't know.
For those listening in podcast form, Paul's cat is just
that's
a
my
ham.
secret source.
That's right. Is a ham. Just wants to be on camera at all times. So Paul, some group of 5 guys I know would really want the job. You got John Summerall at Troy. You got Rhett Lashley at SMU. Jamie Chadwell at Liberty's another one that I think would probably be really interested. What's the chances that those guys get any traction?
I think Chadwell is very intriguing. I know there's been rumors of, obviously he's paid well at Liberty.
Yeah.
You know, that surprises some people, but Liberty's got money, and you don't know the exact terms of his buyout. And you know, I think if this was, I think Rhett Lashley's a very attractive candidate too, and I think if this was previously 2 years ago, that he may be my odds-on favorite to get the job. But now you look at SMU, we know they got a ton of money, and they're fixing to go to the ACC. If that wasn't a factor, then I think he may be odds-on favorite to make that move. Obviously, he's familiar with the SEC and had success
Mhm.
here. But you know, I think to me, Chadwell is very, very intriguing.
Yeah, he's won everywhere he's been, wants to stay in the South, but he's never coached the Power 5 level, and he's never had to recruit as an assistant at the Power 5 level. I think that's really been the knock, but I don't know. I'm of the mind that if you win in a bunch of places, you can probably win anywhere, that's Lance Leipold at Kansas, it's Willie Fritz at Tulane. Like there's a few guys out there like that.
I agree, and you know, it's such a different. And you've been around the SEC, man. It's such a different animal. It's such a different
Mhm.
mindset, and I've seen some coaches come in here that I thought would be successful just get chewed up. You know,
Yeah.
it's so competitive, and you know, it's a 24/7 deal, and it's just a situation where coaches that I thought were really good coaches and had a very good chance of succeeding just get chewed up and spit out. But you know, I think Chadwell, that is a negative that he hasn't been in the Power Five, but I think you have to look at his success and what he's done at that level.
Well, and I also think the Mississippi State job and the Ole Miss job are different from the other SEC jobs at the same level, because we're not talking about Alabama or LSU, or those are different kind of jobs. But all the jobs in the SEC at that level, Mississippi State and Ole Miss, you can get more talent than the other ones because of the JUCO system, because of just the way people tend to still be under recruited sometimes in the state of Mississippi.
Exactly.
That I just think, because I go back to when Dan Mullen was there. Think of the level of talent that he was able to either develop or acquire. Fletcher Cox, who was one of the best defensive linemen in the country when he was playing at Mississippi State. When Dan left and Joe Moorhead took over, there are 3 first rounders sitting on that defense. That's what makes this so intriguing to me, is that you can have first round level talent, whereas a lot of other places you can't, unless you're at Alabama or LSU or Georgia.
I think you got to have a good mixture too, Andy. I think, and this is where Dan was really good at his job with the evaluation process. You know, there's going to be guys in Mississippi. You just mentioned a couple, but you look at this year's cycle, it's no different. There's going to be guys you have to fight for. NIL is going to be a big factor with a lot of these guys, but you also have to be able to evaluate and project where those low 3 stars can, you know, that's where Dan was so good at his job. You know, he
Yeah.
could take a low 3 star that probably played quarterback, you know, look at Bernardra McKinney and turn him
Mm-hmm.
into an All American
Linebacker.
linebacker, you know, to be able to project like that and evaluate, because you said it right. Mississippi kids are very undervalued because they haven't come close to reaching their peak yet, you know, because of, you know, they don't have big coaching staffs, not a good weight room, play every sport under the sun in Mississippi. So when those kids get to college, you're getting a raw product, but the ceiling is so high with those guys.
Well, let's talk about Dan, because he's sitting there on ESPN right now. He's really good on TV. He's obviously still, he got a buyout from Florida, but he was really successful in 9 years at Mississippi State. I've always argued that he kind of spoiled State fans, because they started to think what he was doing there was normal. And it was probably the best job anybody's done there. Do you think he might entertain the possibility of coming back? Do you think Zach Selman might entertain the possibility of bringing him back?
You know, I'm not sure if it gets to serious talks with Dan. You know, obviously people change their minds, especially when you've been out of the game. But I've always been under the impression, and this goes back to my talks with Dan when he was here, that he's probably done with coaching. And you know, he told us often, even on the record, off the record, when he was here, that he didn't want to coach much past his early 50s. He wanted to
Mm.
be with his kids, follow their dreams with sports, I know his son's a very avid golfer, and he's very involved with that. Outside of getting fired from Florida, what he told us a few years ago is exactly the path that he has taken and has been out of college football. And, I wonder if Dan has that competitive fire to be in the new NIL world, because the knock against Dan was his recruiting,
Right.
evaluation and all that, man. He was one of the best, but when it comes to the NIL era, I just wonder if he has the hunger for that.
Well, and that was my question with him as well, because I don't think at Mississippi State you're expected to do what you're expected to do at Florida. Like Florida, for the coach to be successful, you've got to be beating Georgia and Alabama for players regularly. And Dan wasn't doing that. Billy Napier's not winning games, but he is occasionally doing that on the recruiting trail. I just don't know. You don't have to do that at Mississippi State. It's not a requirement of the job. So, but you're right. The ferocity of the NIL battles between Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Arkansas, LSU will be involved in some of that too. Auburn, it is going to be pretty tough.
I agree, and to me that was the biggest hang up, and along those lines, is Dan going to bring back his normal staff that he had with him in Mississippi State and Florida, his buddies, or is he going to be, this is all speculation, but if he did get back into it, is he going to go get an aggressive recruiting staff, guys that are accustomed to NIL and fighting in the streets for these guys? So, I think it's going to be a lot of people talking about that. And, I'm sure Dan loves the attention and people wondering if he's going to get back into coaching or not. But to me, it would be a complete shock if he does coach again.
Well, his on-air partner, Matt Berry at ESPN, tweeted at me on Monday saying that they can't have him unless Matt can be the chief of staff. So that might be the deal breaker there. So what are we talking about in terms of timeline? Obviously, the Bulldogs finished their season on Thanksgiving in the Egg Bowl. Like you said, it's a tough spot for them to be watching Ole Miss have such a good year for the second year in a row. And that's what they're trying to catch up to. When do you think that new person's in place?
If I had to throw a timeline on it, Andy, I would probably say by the 1st of December at the latest. You've got official visitors still scheduled to come in here the first weekend of December. I don't think in this day and age you can forfeit a weekend of official visitors, especially since you only have a couple weekends in December before the signing period comes. And a problem with Mississippi is we have the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game the third weekend of December. So that takes out a lot of kids in your recruiting footprint that can't come that weekend. The interesting thing too, Andy, and this, you've got guys on this recruiting staff here that have been here since Mullen was here originally. That part don't always change. It's kind of different than college basketball where everybody's completely different. Some of these recruiting staff members stay through coaching changes. So they're going to be doing all of that, but you've got to get those certain people in here.
All right, Paul, thank you so much. And good luck covering that coaching search.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.